Hello everyone. Have a nice day. Today, we will explore the trap beneath the orchard. How Tieu and Uri stage a silent counterattack against Lyn, using a hidden recorder, a decoy, proof, and the storm-soaked orchard itself. We'll follow market whispers, a fragile visit to Tieu's mother, and a midnight gate standoff where truth plays back through the rain. If you find it interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. The voice from the recorder crackles through the silence. Check the drawer. Under the shelf. Uri's eyes narrow. The rain hasn't started yet, but the air already smells like thunder. He plays the line again, Lyn's whisper, trembling, unmistakable. Tieu stands by the door, frozen. She doesn't speak, but the look on her face says everything. Something or someone has crossed the line. And this time, they have proof. The orchard was still wrapped in fog when the day began. The lemon trees swayed gently, their leaves shining with morning dew. Uri stepped outside, his boots damp from the soil, his shirt half-buttoned, eyes sharp despite the calm around him. Tieu was already awake. She kneeled by the chicken coop, whispering softly as the hens clucked and fluttered. The sunlight touched her hair like gold dust. For a moment, Uri almost forgot why he'd been restless all night. Almost. He walked back into the house, toward the old wooden cabinet. From his pocket, he pulled a small black recorder, the kind used for interviews, discreet and precise. He hesitated only once before sliding it behind the cabinet's lower shelf. The tiny red light blinked once, then disappeared into shadow. Behind him, Tieu's laughter drifted in from the yard, warm, trusting, unguarded. He clenched his jaw. "I'll keep her safe," he muttered. Later that morning, Tieu filled a wicker basket with lemons, arranging them by size like she always did. Uri leaned against the door frame, pretending to tie his boots. "You'll see your mother today?" he asked. Tieu nodded, smiling. "I'll bring her some eggs, too. Maybe she'll stop being angry." Her smile faltered slightly at the end, but she kept packing. Uri offered to drive her, but she refused the way someone does when trying to prove they can stand on their own. When she finally walked down the dirt path, he stood there longer than he meant to, watching until she disappeared behind the lemon rows. Only then did he turn back into the house to check the recorder. The red light still blinked, waiting. At the market, sunlight bounced off the tin roofs and baskets of vegetables. Tieu's stall smelled of citrus and fresh herbs. She smiled at customers, handed out lemons by the kilo, and hid her unease behind polite laughter. That's when Egan appeared in a casual shirt, sly grin, the kind of man who never comes without reason. He leaned closer, speaking under his breath. "Someone's following you again." Tieu's fingers tightened on the basket handle. "Are you sure?" Egan nodded. "Uri's right to be cautious. But if they're listening, maybe we give them something to listen to." He slid her a small folded paper blank. "Tell them it's proof from Tien Truong," he whispered. Tieu stared at the paper. For the first time, fear and resolve fought in her eyes. "If this goes wrong," Egan interrupted, "then Uri's recorder will tell the rest." By the time she reached her mother's house, the sky had turned pale gray. Tieu left the basket of eggs on the table and waited on the porch. The house was silent, shutters closed, dust thick on the railing. Her phone buzzer. "Uri," Movement inside the house. The drawer opened. Her heart skipped. She opened the app linked to his recorder, and the feed was live. For a moment, only static. Then soft footsteps, wood creaking, a breath too close to the microphone. And then Lynn's voice, low, careful. It should be here. The file. Tu Tieu's throat tightened. She gripped the phone, forcing herself not to move. The screen flickered once more, then silence. She looked toward the road. Far in the distance, a motorbike sped away, leaving a faint trail of dust. Her reflection in the window showed both fear and something sharper. The realization that the game had already started. When her mother finally returned, the smell of smoke from her clothes filled the room. The older woman frowned at the basket. Still trying to buy forgiveness? Tu Tieu lowered her gaze. Just trying to bring something home. The silence between them was thick. Then her mother said quietly, "That man you're living with. People talk." Tu Tieu met her eyes. "Let them. I know who he is." Outside, the same motorbike passed by again, slower this time. The sound echoed like a warning. By dusk, the orchard glowed gold. Uri waited near the porch, rain clouds building in the distance. When Tu Tieu appeared at the gate, soaked in late-day mist, he didn't ask anything, just handed her a towel. She looked at him and asked softly, "Did it record?" Uri nodded. Every word. They stood there for a long time, listening to the first drops of rain hit the soil. In that quiet, there was no need for plans or explanations, only the steady truth humming in a small device inside their house, proof that they were no longer just surviving. They were fighting back. The rain finally arrives, like a decision, not a surprise at first, then confident, filling the gutters and dimming the lantern's glow. Uri wipes the porch rail with his sleeve and listens to the recorder hum inside the cabinet. A small engine of truth in a wooden chest that looks like it should only hold napkins and old spoons. Tu Tieu stands beside him, towel around her shoulders, hair damp, gaze steady. "We don't need to chase," she says. "We won't," he answers. "We set the boundary. Let her find it." They eat a simple supper with the windows open, so the night can breathe through the house. Between thunder rolls, small sounds seem louder. The kettles sigh, the dog turning in its sleep, lemon leaves tapping the sill. Egan arrives without knocking, shakes rain from his jacket, and drops into a chair like he's been part of the furniture all along. "She's restless," he says, nodding toward the road. "Was seen near the pharmacy, then the bus stop, then back toward the district road, pacing in circles like a plane that lost its center." "Good," Uri says. "Let her tire herself on the edges." Egan glances at the cabinet, then at Tu Tieu. "If she comes, you stay back." "I stand beside him," Tu Tieu replies, not raising her voice, just setting it down where it can't be moved. Lightning stitches white seams across the orchard. The lamp flickers, the house steadies, and for a long minute, the three of them sit in a quiet that feels less like fear and more like a held breath. When the headlight finally blooms at the gate, it's not a surprise. It's the last page of a chapter they've all been reading in secret. The motorbike stops. A figure in a hooded raincoat dismounts, steps lightly to the fence, and waits. No rattling at the lock, no rush, just patience sharpened into something mean. Uri nods once to Tu Tieu. She takes out her phone. He takes out the small external speaker, the one he uses for music on good days. He plugs it in. Egan's eyebrows rise. You're going to soundtrack her. Let her hear the room she broke, Uri says. Tu Tieu taps play. It's not words first, just the drawer's breath, the fabric whisper, the tiny tremor in a thief's lungs. Then the whisper that has been living in their house for 24 hours returns to meet its owner. Check the drawer, under the shelf. Outside, the figure doesn't flinch, not visibly, but the shoulders rise a fraction. The head tilts. The listening is involuntary. Tu Tieu turns the volume up one notch. She doesn't look at the gate. She looks at Uri. The look says, I'm here. Uri nods. He scrolls, selects the next clip, a different angle, a faint reflection in the cabinet glass, a silhouette caught in the lantern's soft cone of light. When he presses play again, it's the little gasp from the moment a hand touches what doesn't belong to it. That simple, guilty sound. The figure at the gate takes one step back, then another. A new sound cuts the rain, a small laugh, frayed and brittle. Lynn pushes back her hood. You think a toy will save you? She calls, voice riding the wind. You think people will care what I touched, what I didn't, when everyone knows what he is? Uri doesn't answer. He simply walks to the porch edge and places the speaker on the rail, facing the gate. Tu Tieu join him, shoulder to shoulder. This isn't about who shouts louder, Tu Tieu says, not raising her tone. It's about what stays true when the shouting stops. True? Lynn spits, taking a step forward again. You're living in a story you made up. Orchard saints, loyal lovers. Meanwhile, the world eats people like you for breakfast. That's why we put a plate out, Egan says mildly from the doorway, so the world doesn't starve. Lynn's jaw tightens. The motorbike engine ticks as rain cools it. Somewhere behind her, a frog croaks like a broken bell. She looks at Tu Tieu, as if trying to find the seam in her calm. You were easier when you were sorry, Lynn says. I'm still sorry, Tu Tieu answers. Just not to you. For a moment, it's unclear which way the night will bend. Then Lynn sneers, pulls her hood up, and turns away. The motorbike revs, stalls, catches. She doesn't look back as she disappears into the wet dark. No one speaks. The rain softens as if the orchard has unclenched. Egan exhales a laugh that isn't quite humor. That could have gone louder. Truth doesn't need to shout, Tu Tieu says. Uri lifts the speaker back inside. He closes the recorder app, sets the phone down, and leans his forehead against hers, just for a second, like two people checking the other is real. Warmth passes between them that has nothing to do with the weather. Tomorrow, he says, we take this to someone who can hold it. Not to ruin her, Tu Tieu says, to stop the harm. Exactly. Morning opens like a careful door. The storm has cleaned the sky. The orchard smells like rind and earth. Uri copies the cleanest files onto a labeled drive and a second backup, then slides the recorder, now full, into a cloth pouch. Egan takes the perimeter again and returns with nothing to report but a sunrise. Tu Tieu fills a basket with eggs and lemons. She wraps a small parcel of sticky rice and ties it with twine. For my mother, she says, meeting Uri's eyes, and for us. They walk the district road together, Uri carrying the small truth in his pocket, Tu Tieu carrying food like a truce. At the market, the same vendors tease them about the rain, about love, about how lemons taste sweeter after a storm. Two people at a corner table glance up and then glance away. Rumors need new air. Today's is too clean. At her mother's house, the older woman opens the door without the usual pause. The sternness hasn't left, but it has put its hands in its pockets. "You came together," she says. "We brought breakfast," Tu Tieu answers. They sit at the table that has held years of unspoken things. Uri places the cloth pouch on the wood, not pushing it forward, just letting it be seen. "We have something recorded," he says gently. "We'll give it to the right hands. We're not asking you to fix anything. We just wanted you to know we're not hiding." The older woman looks at the pouch, then at their faces. "I liked you better when you were children," she says, but there's a smile hiding in the corner of the line. Less complicated, more noisy. "We're still noisy," Tu Tieu says. "Just in better ways." The older woman nods once. Eat. After breakfast, they stop by the small office near the district square where problems go to become paperwork. The official there listens, watches the clip without commentary, and asks for the drive. Uri hands over the labeled copy. The backup stays in his pocket like a heartbeat. The official's face doesn't reveal much, but he says, "We will look into it," in a tone that sounds like a door closing gently, not slamming. Outside, the air is light. They don't celebrate, they walk. Egan peels off toward the bus stop, 2 fingers lifted in a lazy salute. "Call if the sky changes," he says. "It will," Uri replies, "but maybe not like before." Back at the orchard, the house stands exactly as it did yesterday, and also entirely new. The cabinet is still old, the lemons are still heavy, the dog still chooses the warmest patch of floor. Tu Tieu brews tea and carries 2 cups to the porch. Uri sits, hands open on his knees, as if the day has asked for nothing he cannot give. "The orchard's quieter," she says. "It knows who it can trust," he answers. They sip. A breeze lifts the curtain and sets it back down. Somewhere in the grove, a bird tries 3 notes and decides that's enough for now. Under the cabinet, the recorder rests no longer bait, no longer a weapon, just a witness that doesn't need to speak unless asked. "Are we done?" Tu Tieu asks after a while. "With traps?" Uri says, "Yes." "With fear?" He thinks, then looks at her like a man who has finally learned the difference between protecting and partnering. "We'll keep what's worth keeping. We'll let the rest go." She leans her head on his shoulder. The day doesn't announce anything. It just keeps opening, like the quietest kind of victory. And beneath the orchard, in the house that now belongs to their courage as much as their routine, the proof of what they faced settles into place, kept, not clutched, remembered, not relieved.
Trong một vườn cây ăn quả mù sương, Tu Tieu và Uri chuyển từ phòng thủ sang phản công thầm lặng. Cảm nhận được có kẻ nghe lén, Uri giấu một máy ghi âm nhỏ dưới chiếc tủ cũ. Sau đó nó ghi lại cảnh linh lục loại đồ đạc của họ. Tại chợ, Egan trang bị cho Tu Tieu một bằng chứng trống rỗng, mồi nhử dụ dỗ truy đuổi, trong khi sự thật được ghi lại một cách lặng lẽ, một chuyến thăm mẹ đầy căng thẳng thử thách lòng trung thành, rồi mưa báo hiệu một cuộc đối đầu lúc nửa đêm. Linh nghe thấy tiếng thì thầm của chính mình, kiểm tra ngăn kéo dưới kệ, bị cuốn vào cơn bão và rút lui. Lúc bình minh, họ giao lưu bằng chứng và chia sẻ nó với văn phòng thích hợp. Chọn ranh giới thay vì trả thù, chè, tranh và những chiếc ghế đã được sửa chữa lấy lại sự bình yên trong ngôi nhà. Máy ghi âm trở về ngăn kéo, không còn là một cái bẫy nữa mà là một nhân chứng. Khi vườn cây thở dễ dàng hơn, cùng nhau họ giữ lại những gì quan trọng để những thứ còn lại được tự do.